Hey, what's your problem? You have business problems? We have business solutions. Well, maybe.
Right.
Life is a fight.
It is.
In business, every day is a fight.
So true.
So, hey, what's your problem?
Yes, thank you. John David Wells got good news. He's coming to town in February, and he's going to be on the show. We're going to try and get Mr. David Wells. I think that's how we... Mr. Wells. John David is his, first names. Mr. Wells will be coming on the show in February, so look forward to that. This is the What's Your Problem podcast, a show where we talk to Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals about the one thing that always keeps them up at night, because it's always something. That is the impetus of this show. This is a video and audio podcast. Check us out at whatsyourproblempodcast.com. Pick your poison. If you like watching for some reason, knock yourself out. We're on YouTube and Facebook. If you like listening, all the platforms are there as well. And of course, give us a like, subscribe, share, and rate. I was told to tell you to give us 5-star ratings only. No more willy-nilly, hey, I don't care if you rate 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star. 5-star only. If you can't give us a 5-star, let us know why. And we'll try and make it so you can give us a 5-star. I am your host, Jim McCarthy with jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com. And today, a long-awaited guest, Mr. Clay Morgan, Executive Director of B&I, Middle Tennessee, Indiana, and Kentucky. Am I right on that title?
You got the alphabet soup. Thank you, Jim.
You're very welcome. I've been after you for quite some time to be on the podcast. I even think before, when I had the JMVO Weekly Primer, we were trying to get you on, but you are a mega busy man.
Well, as are you, and I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely,
Pleasure
my friend.
to be here.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we always do, if you're an avid listener to the podcast, is something called the Random 5 with that smooth musical transition. Gotta love it. Clay, what we do is we talk about the Random 5. 5 utterly random questions. So are you prepared? It is brought to you by it'syourshow.co. If you see the logo on the TV there that just passed up, It's Your Show is a podcast production company that produces this podcast. You're looking at the guy who actually produces all the podcasts at it'syourshow.co. If you want a podcast like this that can generate a ton of micro content for all the socials, Instagram, the LinkedIns, the TikToks, all those little snippets that you see from other people that are doing the same thing, let's talk. That's what the podcast movement is pretty much all about. Personal Branding 101. All right, Mr. Clay, are you ready to go? We're finally getting around to it. Question number 1. What old person things do you do?
Ooh, I really love to go for hikes over at Edwin Warner Park. It's a family favorite.
Nice.
Absolutely.
That's kind of, it's a youngish person thing to do, but,
Okay. I thought it dated me more than it does, perhaps.
You're not paying like Pinnacle or Bridge or anything, are you? Or?
No, but I did recently get into what I thought was a fad, but I am now hooked on pickleball.
That is a very growing thing.
It is.
I've been hearing a lot about it.
I used to laugh and say, that's an old person's thing. I don't know that it is anymore.
Right.
At least that's what I'm telling myself, because I'm into it.
Nice. I'm not even sure how it's played or what it looks like or anything.
Looks like tennis, but smaller court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, I'll have to check that out. Question number 2, what is the most amazing slow motion video you've seen?
I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to look at a slow motion video that is on my camera right now. And it is a picture of my son jumping off of a swerfer. If you haven't seen one of these, it's a combo. It's like a surfboard that's a swing that you hang up high in the tree.
Oh, yeah,
and
okay.
I piled up all the leaves from the yard about 15 yards in front of it.
And this
thing gets up a good 15 feet off the ground. You know what I mean? And he jumps out, and it's every mother's worst nightmare. Looks like a broken arm waiting to happen. But he lands in the leaves.
Nice.
And it's all in slow-mo. And when he gets totally buried. And for a second, you're going, what happened to that kid? And then he pops out.
And that's all in slow motion.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta love that. I like the, sometimes they'll film a bullet coming out of the barrel of a gun. and going through things, and they get somehow the slow motion of that.
As long as it's not a person. I think that's probably good.
It's like apples and water bottles and, just seeing how it penetrates. The other thing is doing if you can do it on your phone, is like doing that and then slow that down. It's hilarious. Gets me every single time.
You're giving me ideas. I think I'll get the boy involved too. He'll like that.
You will like that. Okay, question number 3. What are some unusual places you've been?
Unusual places that I have been. Well, I've got to confess, I'm not a very adventurous traveler. So a lot of the places that I've been are pretty generic.
Yeah.
But I would say recently, one of the coolest places that I have been is a small town in North Carolina. It has lots of old people there. Brevard, North Carolina. It's very artsy. And I had not been there before.
Is that near
Nashville? Went there
Asheville?
This summer. Yes.
Okay.
It is. About 30 minutes from there.
Yeah. Anything artsy is going to be around that area in North Carolina, for sure. Question number 4. What would be the worst thing to hear as you were going under anesthesia before heart surgery? Did you guys pay the light bill?
What are we operating on here?
We all paid up on the electric.
I got to say, though, the funniest thing I've ever heard from anesthesia was not before going under, it was after coming out.
Right.
That's another story for another time.
Are you sure he's not awake?
Spoiler alert, I was hallucinating. I woke up in the middle. The anesthesia wasn't enough.
Oh, my God.
And I woke up, and I thought that the doctors were trying to kill me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I took a swing at the doctor. So then they had to double down on it. And by the time they got me out, yeah, I was feeling the effects. I'll leave it that way.
That happened to me. I was getting wisdom teeth removed.
That was the same thing.
Yeah.
Same
I woke
procedure.
up right in the middle. Literally, the nurse and the dentist were like, and they go, just go back to sleep. And I said, okay. I was out.
I bet they wish they would have tried that trick with me. Just say, go back to sleep.
Just go back to sleep. It's all right. All right. Question number 5 and the final question. What's the spiciest thing you've ever eaten? These are good questions.
Oh my gosh. So a friend of mine who I think you've met before, Jeremy Walsh, who does all the technology support for our company.
He did the app, right?
He did.
That's right. That's right.
Well, he does a lot of the support on the back end. He didn't do the development on the app.
Right.
But he's the frontline guy. Anyway, we had him in town as a featured presenter. He's based out of Rhode Island, the smallest state, for those of you who don't know. A little trivia in there. And he brought some local hot sauce with him. And
from Rhode Island.
From Rhode Island. And I can't remember, it was something, Diablo something or other. And we put that on some chili that we had made at the house. Paid the price. It was memorable.
You'd never think that Rhode Island would be known for hot sauce.
I don't know that outside of our borders, I ever really thought of who would have the hottest sauce. But I can tell you that it brought me the most pain of any sauce that I've.
Rhode Island is known for being small, seafood, trips to Block Island and Newport, and really big old mansions. That's how I think of Rhode Island. Definitely don't think of hot sauce.
Put it on the list.
I know. Have you ever been there?
I have not.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I've not been there for fun. I have been there for a conference before.
In Rhode Island?
Been in Providence, yep.
Yeah, you blink and you miss it.
Yep.
I grew up in Connecticut, so right next to Rhode Island.
You would know firsthand.
Been there several times. Move that mic down just slightly. There we go. And there you go. The Random 5 brought to you by it'syourshow.co. Check them out. Check us out, rather. And let us know if we can help you with a podcast. All right, off we go. I'm fascinated. And the reason why I've always been interested in having you on the show is because I've been a part of BNI for, probably 12 years now, off and on. And, have met the executive leadership team a handful of times. Your parents were the originators of the franchise, I guess, back in the day. Mm-hmm. And, talking about how you grew up with this, I would imagine it was a big part of your life, teenage years. Am I right? I mean, how did everything begin with your folks getting into it? What were they doing and what brought them to it?
Great question. So, yes, first off, been a very large part of my life, both involuntarily and voluntarily. But how they got into it originally was actually, no coincidence, by referral. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And for those of you who are not familiar with B&I, basically we give folks a system to help them develop relationships with other professionals that generate referrals. Of course, that's leading to the bottom line that we're all looking to grow.
Right.
And through a previous experience, they had a colleague from another walk of life who was inviting them to check out B&I and encouraging them to look at this franchise about once a month for several months in a row. And essentially, my dad took about the 6th or 7th phone call from this individual and said, tell you what, I really appreciate this offer, and I'd appreciate you never giving it to me again.
That's what your dad said.
If I go and check out this new opportunity, will you promise not to call me anymore?
That's the key language, isn't it? I need you to check out this new opportunity. It reeks of multi-level marketing, right?
And it can be phrased that way in any number of businesses. And the truth is, they are opportunities.
Yeah.
No matter what kind of business it is.
It is.
And this one truly was for my parents and turns out to be tens of thousands of people in this area. Truly transformational.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad that he finally said, yeah, I'll check out that opportunity.
What was he doing at the time?
At the time, he was an independent publisher and actually still is an independent publisher.
Oh,
He's
really?
kept that going all this time.
wow.
He's been in printing and publishing, doing magazines as well as hardbound books, and has continued to cultivate that client list. And at this point is just working with repeat clients, except for a couple special ones that will pop up from time to time, and shifted eventually into B&I being his full-time business.
Now, did B&I start out in Tennessee? Is that where they based out of originally?
For our operations, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Started in Nashville back in, they bought, so B&I is an international franchise.
Yeah.
And they bought from scratch the opportunity to build B&I in this area back in 1994, and then started it up formally in 1995.
It's so hard to believe that in 1994, I mean, the organization was only about 10 years old at that point. Didn't Ivan Meisner start around 83, 84?
Yes.
Okay. So I remember talking to him on my previous podcast, The Weekly Primer, that he started it just out of necessity. And let's get a whole bunch of people together, and then all of a sudden it just opened up what he is known for, the father of modern business networking.
It's amazing how things can evolve over time, and sometimes very, very quickly when you're onto something and you got some good people around you. We were fortunate to be part of that.
So 94, your parents got involved. They were very early with the organization from what it sounds like, only 10 years in, because in a business's life, that's not much time.
Really, franchising the business outside of the West Coast was just beginning.
Oh, really? Okay.
At that point. There were no international operations at that point, now in well over 70 countries around the world, but at that point, only a few states. Yes.
Wow.
Pictures of those early conferences, which my parents were at, have some wonderful, still 80s vintage clothing, even though it was the early to mid 90s. And a very, very small crowd. Got some great old, I think now they would call them collector's items.
Yeah.
Little memorabilia around the office. But it's like so many businesses, it's when you see the success build over time, it's very rewarding to look back and just think about everything that has transpired over that time.
But at that time in 94, how old are you at that point?
Young.
Let's just leave it at that. Teens, late, getting into that area.
I was just getting into that area.
Okay.
So when they started the business, I was in the 4th grade.
Okay.
And as they got it going, within 12 months, they had already started almost 10 chapters within 1 year. And so quickly, the small business, like so many folks start up, when you do see success quickly, all of a sudden you go, well, I'm not sure that we saw this taking off this fast. How do we scale now?
Yeah.
What's next? What does that look like? And when that comes to staffing, there was still not a budget to be able to hire other people. I'm an only child.
Yeah.
And so I very much on the back end, just little things. Because keep in mind back then, forget the internet. Fax machines weren't even around.
Yeah.
Not with any prevalence. And so really any mode of communication that was being done was either in person at meetings, by phone, or by snail mail.
Yeah.
So anything that was going on snail mail related with the organization, I was in that department.
Just making sure that got done. That's right. So you were in it from the very beginning as well.
That was the involuntary part, but yes.
Was it something that you were like, man, I'm gonna totally do this. I'm sinking my teeth into this. Or was there something that you've always wanted to do that I'm just gonna do the B&I thing?
Not at the very beginning, definitely not. Because at that point, too, frankly, I still wanted to be a professional baseball player.
Right.
Now, that was naive, but that's how young I was.
Right.
And what was most important in my life.
Did you play? I would imagine you played.
Absolutely.
Were you good?
Good enough to play travel ball.
Nice.
And played that all the way through high school, which was great. I chased anything with a ball, but baseball was my favorite.
Right.
But as far as your other question, I think just the evolution of what was I considering and what ultimately led me to getting into the business, going through high school about that time, and the business was successful by then. Every small business has its own journey. There was still a lot of growth ahead of it, but it was mature enough to where even at my young age, I had a clear picture of what day-to-day operations looked like, saw the good model, the good infrastructure that they had in place. And it was very appealing because it's what's not to like about a business. It's working with other business owners, helping them be successful.
Right.
And having watched, at that point, a decade plus, and having seen a lot of those same people be clients all that time. And I got to know them, and they knew me as the little kid. And then they would, kind of like the family reunion. I'd see them once a year or maybe twice a year. And they're, how much you've grown. And I saw their businesses grow.
Yeah.
And their families grow. And so I was definitely attracted to it. And I thought when I went off to college, I really would like to come back and do this. When I went to college, I shifted gears a bit though, and I was intending originally to go into transactions, commercial real estate transactions on the legal side.
Right.
And so most of college, both while I was in school, as well as during the summers, I was interning at various law firms and just getting experience, seeing what that looked like. And I really enjoyed that. Yeah. I enjoyed that a lot.
I could totally see you doing that.
It was, met some very, very good people, some good mentors to me. And ultimately, what changed for me was, as happens for, I think, a lot of people, but especially young men, then there was a woman.
Right.
And what I knew was that as I wanted to be successful both in my profession, but also as a person, was that I had to create the kind of life that I wanted for us to be happy. And for me, that definitely meant that I couldn't be a one-sided workaholic, which was the only way I saw me being successful in that role. And it may have evolved differently over time, but for me, that was something that was very, very important, was finding that work-life balance. And one of the things I had always enjoyed about B&I was the fact that while we're doing business, we're also helping people do life better.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say a lot of people were probably speaking into your life throughout your formative teenage years that, in a whole multitude of success levels, and you have access to them. And I would imagine that was a huge takeaway for you, because here's my perception of you, is that you're so well put together. You get in front of a whole room of people. You're mega articulate. You're well-spoken, well-groomed. And it's like you were almost formed to take this role, right? And I'm like, my God, you've just got it, the whole package, dude,
Well, I really appreciate that. This is being videoed.
It is.
Is the blushing coming through?
I mean, I'm not trying to, blow smoke when it's just that's my perception. And the role fits you so well. But I'm wondering, did all of that, was that the case when you were growing up?
That's an interesting question.
Or did you always speak so clearly, so well? I mean, you've got. I'm stammering here. I'm supposed to be the skilled orator. You know what I mean?
Well, you are the skilled orator.
I don't know.
We all know idiot. That anybody who listens to this or watches this show regularly,
they roll their eyes a lot, and
So, it's kind of funny as I think back on, especially just public speaking, as one big piece to that.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was on a debate team.
Okay. Yeah.
And I definitely have experience with communicating to groups, whether it's something that I'm coming to the table with my idea or having to adapt a bit on the fly. And so that is, and that's I believe that's a muscle you have to build. I do have experience with that. But what's really funny is at that same time when I could do debate and kind of get in that zone, if I had to write, say, a book report or something like that and stand up in front of a class and give a brief presentation on it, it would just be petrifying.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like reading from a page? Or just talking about what you learned? I think
something about, when you're doing debate, you have your team, but I think you're competing. Yeah. You're speaking to somebody else. There's something, I think, just inherently challenging about presenting in front of your peers.
Yeah.
At any level. That's not unique. It's particularly bad when you're a teenager, I believe. At least it was for me. I can't speak for others. But
really?
Life's just kind of awkward then anyway, a little bit, right?
Well, I mean, the debate team is not exactly the most popular team to be on.
Hey, whoa, what are you talking about?
But looking back on it, I would have done that. All the multitude of regrets that I have about my life, I would actually seek out a debate team because I think it makes you a better speaker. Debate team is the first step to becoming an attorney in a way, thinking from both sides of a topic and arguing those sides,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, on the other side of it, when you look at where I am now within the business, and one thing that I share this with anybody who will listen to me. If you are looking to improve speaking skills as a business professional, I don't think there's a better opportunity going than Toastmasters. That is just a phenomenal organization. I also was a member of that for several years.
Really?
Out of college as well.
What do they do in that organization? I know I've heard of it before, but what's the big gist? What's the big idea behind Toastmasters?
The gist is you are regularly meeting with a group who is all there to get better at speaking. Mm-hmm. And they will give you handbooks. There's kind of a process you go through from the first time you present in front of the group, the second, the third, so on. And while you're at the meeting, you're focused as a group on a few different things. One is you may be that more in-depth presenter where you've got, and the guide will tell you on a given week, maybe it's a 5-minute presentation, or it could be 10. It may vary by group. But other people in the group throughout that meeting who are helping to facilitate it, they'll rotate their roles each time that the meeting's taking place. And while they're getting adept at essentially facilitating different parts of a meeting, sharpening that leadership skill set, every time that they use a filler word and like,
yeah,
we're working on that with my daughter right now. The like,
does she
doing this at the table? She's 11. We're pre-teening it with that. So it just started popping up. I'm like, let's nip that in the bud.
Is that
if
the
at all possible? But whenever
Valley
they do
girl
that,
like?
It's not that bad.
No,
she's trying it on.
Right.
We're trying to have her not try it on. But during the meeting, anytime you've got one of those fillers, somebody has a little bell.
Right.
And they're ringing that bell and they'll count up. And at the end of the meeting, they will say how many total filler words there were. And they'll kind of do that as a roll call for folks.
Wow.
So it's a great way to help just be more aware. Because even if it's not a terrible habit, and even during this interview, we'll use some of those.
You're going to, as long as they're not too overbearing.
But so often we just don't realize what we're saying. And so I loved that about it, as well as at the end of the meeting, you provide feedback to the speakers during that meeting, and there's designated folks in the group that are giving that. And again, those roles rotate, and it's just a very good skill development.
I may have to look into that.
It's fantastic.
My role in radio was not a lot of on-air work, but mostly behind the scenes voiceover production where you could fix the errors, you know. Again, that's I wrote down before we went on, I've been meaning to do this for weeks, and I'll hold this up to the camera. I wrote down all of the filler words that I use because I listen just about to every single episode of this podcast, because if I got to tell my clients that that's what they need to do when they make their own podcast, the only way you're going to get better is if you listen back to your stuff. With radio, with the voiceover, that's what we do. That's what we did. So I have, I mean, is one. You know is another. And whenever I'm about to tell a story or make a point about something that I say a lot, I notice I tell people all the time. So I wrote those 3 little things down. And I also wrote a note here to slow down, stop stammering, and collect your thoughts. Because my last 3 episodes, my gosh, I was off the rails. But, you know, that's what you got to go through. Even after 20 some odd years of me doing this, I'm still trying to get better.
It never stops.
No.
In any line of work, it's the truth.
When you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot.
Well said.
Thank you. I'm not going to make that into a filler word, though. That's a good saying, you know.
Well, I think it's also important because you want to be personable. You got to be you. It's not about being robotic. But when you're aware of those things, you can at least minimize it.
I didn't
where it's
write
not a distraction.
I didn't write simply because I think I've weaned that out of my vernacular. Whenever I have the impetus or the urge to say it, I pause. And simply, you know, it's okay to pause. It actually draws people in when you pause. So, yeah, that's something I need to look into for sure. Is there a chapter around here of Toast Dad? There's got to be.
There are a few in the greater Nashville area.
I'll have to look into that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. I want to learn about if Clay was defiant towards his parents, because every kid goes through that. Do you find that your kids are kind of going to push back and push the envelope? I know that my kids do.
My children would never. Never. But I did.
Yeah, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Really? What does a defiant Clay Morgan look like? Because your parents, I mean, there we go again. I just said it. Now I'm all self-conscious about it. What did they kind of groom you in a way as well? Or were they learning themselves at that point, being surrounded by other business people of different magnitudes?
I suppose that they were grooming me. Were they grooming me for this? No.
Right.
You know, what else is interesting? You talk about backgrounds. Originally, my dad was in journalism before he got into publishing. That was kind of prior to the publishing journey. And so I think naturally between that experience and my mom was a high school English teacher, so much of the skill sets we're talking about here that really helped me to be successful in B&I, that's just who they were.
It was second nature.
It had nothing really to do with the business itself. I think that's just parents bringing what they know, the best of what they know, and sharing it with their kids. You know, that's what I hope to do with mine as well.
We all hope that. How old are your kids?
11. My daughter's 11. My son's 8.
Okay.
They're 2.5 years apart.
Right. That's always fun. I have the same scenario, except one's 16 and one's 14. So
I'll be coming to you for notes soon.
Sure. You can totally sit down with me. I'd be glad to impart whatever wisdom I have. And we'll get back to this question. I want to know, what did defiance look like to you in your growing up?
Oh, you know, just getting in trouble just because you could.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
The
just
stupid
little
stuff.
Oh, just stupid stuff.
No setting streams on fire or anything, or gasoline.
No,
like I did?
nothing that ever had the fire department come. I was fortunate with that. But, we were so fortunate because, while I'm still a young man, at least that's what I tell myself every day, looking back, we just were able to get into so much more without even checking in with our parents.
Right.
That I think is normal now, but we were still at the age where Saturday, hey mom, I'm going out. We're on bikes. See you later. All right. Be back by 5. We'd take off 9 o'clock in the morning, wouldn't come back.
And you grew up here in Middle Tennessee, right?
Yeah. Born and raised in Nashville.
And then you expanded, the B&I franchise went to Kentucky and Indiana.
Correct.
Okay.
South of Indy.
South of Indy. Oh, everything south of Indy.
Yes.
Evansville?
Evansville.
Do you work closely with South Central Inc.? Does that ring a bell?
It doesn't.
The Engelbrechts, they don't ring a bell, really?
The name.
Okay.
Sure, the Engelbrechts.
I had this really fleeting thought just before. I'm like, for some reason, I think he knows the Engelbrechts. And I worked with them in my radio days here, where J.P. Engelbrecht was being groomed to take over the business from his father, J.D. And he was one of the most pleasurable people I've ever worked with. And it's funny because every time I interact with you, you remind me of him so much. Like there's definitely a camaraderie there that you guys could, if you ever met each other, I think you guys would hit it off famously.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a challenge out there now. I need to ask for a referral to make that happen.
Yeah.
Or I could just ask you.
I could make that happen, I believe. I haven't talked to him in probably about 4 or 5 years, but every now and then I will reach out and just say, hey, how are you? He'll get back to me. I'll ask him if he's ever down this way, invite him on the podcast. We haven't made it happen yet, but surely enough, I'm like, next time he's down here, dude, we got to sit and grab lunch or something.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy, one of the things that I think a lot of people in sales enjoy is being able to go to different towns, different cities, and just be with people. And it's great people in Evansville. We actually just started a couple new chapters there this year in that market. Got a couple on tap for next year as well. So I'm up there enough. Would love to be able to sit down with him there.
Yeah.
We could do a road trip. We can mix it up.
I'm on board. I'd love to. Anytime I can go see JP is a good day. So I always liked our relationship together. He is, or getting back to what you were saying before, you mentioned a key word. Anytime that you're in sales, going on the road is a lot of fun. Is that what you think you're in? Is that your role, do you believe? Like a sales role?
I think if you own a company and if you work at a company, you're in sales.
Right. I agree.
Now, that can look different at different seasons for different people. Mm-hmm. And that certainly has evolved for me and is continuing to evolve over time. But yeah, absolutely. I think we're all in sales.
We'll go into this. Let's just do this.
What's your problem?
What is your problem? And if I were to speculate, it's always creating more chapters and finding ways to get out there. Am I right?
Oh gosh. Getting out there is a challenge, but starting new chapters, that's not the biggest challenge. Actually, I think the biggest challenge that we have is helping existing chapters to grow.
Yeah. There's a learning curve for sure in the B&I mentality. A lot of people will try it out, maybe put their toe in the water, and then, I can go find another networking group. You hear a lot, just like B&I, but without the rules. How many times have you heard that phrase?
I lost count a little while ago.
Yeah.
But, there's a reason they call it Kleenex.
Right. But I mean, it is the standard of which that a lot of people put that measure to because of the rules. I mean, a lot of people think, I don't have that kind of time to commit for the meetings. I don't, want to or have the energy or effort to find a referral, do a one-to-one. It is a massive time commitment, but when you really dive into why these things are in place, then it makes sense. It's what you should be doing anyway as a business owner.
Absolutely. And I think what you just said, Jim, about when people whether they hear about it and they've heard from other people, or they come to a chapter meeting and they start thinking, well, I might dip my toe in the water. Wait, what's involved? If they think it's not for them, they're
Probably
absolutely
isn't.
right.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, this isn't for everybody. But I think what a lot of folks that have been our clients for years will tell you is, in a way, kind of what I referred to earlier, why I got into the business, which is that the beauty of really embracing B&I is really just a way of doing business. It's not something extra. It's not another networking meeting. I think so often, because we're extremely busy, especially in the small to medium-sized business world, and you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And I think as people look around and they're trying to make sure that every minute, is best spent, so often that's on working in the business.
True.
Instead of working on it as much as people would like. And some of that's natural, but I think this is an instance where networking with any organization, but certainly with one that is giving you a structured system to follow, kind of a blueprint, like, hey, I've got these fitness goals for this year. Well, it's not going to happen because you just join the why.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to have a plan for what circuit training you're doing or whatever that's going to look like on certain muscle groups to get you the results that you want. And B&I is doing that for your business to fill your referral pipeline. But if all you're looking for is to check the box to say, well, I'm out there networking, no, it's not going to be a fit.
Yeah.
Because it's not just going to a meeting and networking. You've got to be in a space, in a mindset, really. It's the time is the biggest commitment, but it's much more mentally just about embracing the fact that, however many employees or team members that you have, you're really looking at this group as an opportunity to expand that. And so you've got to pour into them the same way you would pour into other members of your team within your company.
Yeah.
And if you do that and you treat them like they're one of your best team members or one of your best employees, what can you do to keep them? What can you do to make their experience go smoother? And in this case, that means how can you help them to help you?
Yeah.
And how can you find ways to give to them? That's just like building an infectious culture in a company, right?
5149. That's what Gary Vaynerchuk talks about a lot about is 5149, which is essentially another way of saying giver's gain. That's
Absolutely.
one of the big core principles, core values of B&I is giver's gain. In our chapter, is ours the largest in your organization? The Williamson County chapter? I believe it is.
Yes, currently.
Okay. Why did it work with us? And there are other chapters that, dare I say, strive to be as large or as, proactive, I guess you could say.
Hey, it ain't bragging if it's true.
But, I don't like to beat my chest when it comes to things like that. I like to hear from other chapters. For example, I was listening to a podcast this morning and they were talking about B&I on the podcast, and they said, well, hey, every time it comes around to my turn to talk about my business, I've got 30 to 45 to 60 seconds to give the room my pitch. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do. It's not a pitch. It's telling people what you do in the simplest way possible and asking for the kind of people you're looking for, based on previous experiences with customers and how you've helped somebody else. Look-alike people to that is what that is when you get up in front of the room. It's not pitching your wares, right? That's faux pas number one in a way.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Thank you.
In fact, I was so relieved to hear you say that as your response, because I was just thinking, how do I dive into this?
Right.
But truth be told, again, this is where, not to speak poorly of any other opportunity or organization, I think it's natural.
Yeah.
When folks think of networking, they think, what can I do to get a sale? I think that's kind of the hand in glove thought that people have about networking. And that's part of why a lot of times when I believe, based on my experience and what I've heard from others, it's not a big surprise that when people talk about is this a good fit for me, or what network should I go to? They correlate that directly back to, one, how easy it felt for their time, and two, did they make a sale or do they think they're going to? For sure, we wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't be in this position with BNI if people weren't getting sales from our organization. Make no mistake about it. That's not a bad word, right? We're all in this to make sales.
At some point you have to, yeah.
But going back to what the real opportunity is for, in my opinion, for any network, this isn't even just a BNI thing. Network means that you're building up a sphere of influence of people that are going to be motivated to want to help you in some way. That may be sales, that may be connecting you to somebody else, it may be helping you get tickets to a concert. You know, it doesn't always have to come back to sales. That's going to be a big part of it, but it's building relationships.
Yeah.
And what the real beauty of BNI, and one thing that we work very hard, our team of directors works very hard to communicate, is actually that BNI is not a buyer's club. It's absolutely not a buyer's club. This is an extension of your sales force.
Yeah.
And so as you treat the members of this group as folks that every week you've got to come in and give them a nugget so that they're better prepared to promote you, your products, your services. You're doing things to give to them so that they're all in. They're excited to want to help you out. That's what it's all about. And that's the culture that we really work to create within BNI. Sometimes we're more successful than others with certain groups. You know, it's people, right? It's communication. There's a lot of different touch points. But I believe whether it's BNI or it's, your company, for folks who are listening, it doesn't matter the industry. If you're treating your team like that's around you, you're going to have a healthy culture. And that's, in essence, really what BNI is all about. It's just the difference is we're bringing together a diverse array of professionals from all different industries, white collar, blue collar. And that's the other beauty of it too, because not only are you getting to meet some really great business leaders and be able to expand that influence for your brand, but you're also getting exposure to ideas and the connections that people that are really good folks, that they're in a totally different industry than you would otherwise have no exposure to them. You'd have no reason to be talking to them unless it happened to be that your kids played ball together, you went to church together, something like that. And now you really get to know them beyond the business.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
To me,
I'm getting all jazzed up.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes BNI so special.
The whole organization is based on that 5149, giver's gain. That even when you get up and you talk to the whole room and you give your spiel, it really is about them. And if you have that mindset, when you have your 30-second commercial, it's not about what you do and all the different things and how you can help people and how your business does that. But guys, I need to make this as easy as possible for you to just go out and go, dude, I've got somebody instantly. And this is an easy referral for me to make because you've made it easy for me. In our group, we've got 50-ish members. And then on top of that, you've got maybe 12 to 15 guests on average every week that are just hammering you with messages. And some of those messages are going to cut through. Some of them are going to go by the wayside. Just depends on how they're constructed and what you're asking for. And if it's more in there to help me help you to best understand what it is that you're looking for. And that's the biggest thing I see all the time is people just don't know how to get up and talk about their business and present it in a way that's easily digestible. I remember even being lambasted one time by a member. She lambasted the entire group for not getting what she was saying over the time that she was there in front of guests and everything. I was like, yeah, you just completely sent a signal that's not good.
I was going to say, if you thought it wasn't working before, it isn't going to be working now.
Yeah, when they got really frustrated and aired it out in front of the group, it was like, dude. And then you have some people, and I love it when people get up, and this happened a couple of occasions where they ask for dates for the weekend. What's the most outlandish ask you've heard in a BNI setting? That's a good question.
It's a great question.
You're afraid who you're going to offend if they listen because they know it's going to be them.
We'll just say that it was in the adult industry.
Really?
Really.
Real? No kidding. I can only imagine. The things you must hear, especially with it being at the top of an amalgamation of so many different cross sections of businesses. My gosh. Moving forward, I mean, what are the goals for the franchise? Is it to expand even beyond Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee?
Well, if an opportunity like that came up, absolutely. But for us, I mean, we've got more than enough real estate.
Yeah.
And frankly, we're very excited. Every business has seasons. And for me, I've been in a ownership role with this company now for 9 years.
Right.
And during that time, we've made some pretty sizable operational adjustments. Also worked on adjusting and scaling our staffing. And we've just recently added another layer and another vision for that layer over the next 3 years. And so I think what you're going to see here in Middle Tennessee, but also for anybody listening across our 3 states, is overall in the next 3 years, we'll double.
Oh, wow.
Just in this footprint. And that's based on a lot of different reasons. Nothing happens overnight, but that's why I'm saying 3 years.
Do you think it might be tied into the fact that this region has become hyper entrepreneurial in a way? Maybe even the country has. There's been such a bent towards that in the past several years.
I think that will only help.
Yeah.
I believe that the primary reason for the growth that we're about to have really is like a lot of businesses. It's just about, you steer where you stare.
Yeah.
And frankly, we have been building our infrastructure towards where we could stare more at some substantial growth. We've had very good, positive growth in our business for some time, but it's really been more reactive based on folks coming to us. And we've been working to scale our staffing so that we can, we want to make sure everybody has a good experience.
Yeah.
And so as they're coming in, whether it's to an existing group or in particular as we develop new groups as well, we want to make sure that, we're doing that responsibly. And so, we're not spring chickens. I mean, This business has been around now for 23 years. Sorry, my math isn't so good, I guess.
No, your franchise, 33 years.
Right? That's going to be overall.
Yeah.
But as we go back 27 years.
27 years.
I went on the wrong side of that.
Yeah.
So.
See, bad at math. Me.
But 27 years in this business, it's not like we're new to growth.
Yeah.
But probably since the beginning of this company, we haven't been in a position to grow as rapidly as we're going to now. And the great news is we're in a better position to support that sustainably as well.
Do you feel like you're working on the business versus in? Or do you still feel both?
Oh, both.
Yeah.
But more so on.
I think that is there's an element of a misnomer to that statement, working on your business. I've heard that before. And in the beginning of any business, I'm sorry, you got to work in your business.
Oh, amen.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to work on yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's even when you're building the culture, if you've worked in your business and occasionally you have to work in it to show your team that everything I ask you to do is something that I'm capable of doing, and I could probably outpace you on it. I found that to be true this year with the business that we're doing here with the lighting. Getting up on a lift, having to put in lights, don a tool belt, and go back to the 20-year-old Jim McCarthy that did electrical work, and dare I say, kind of show these guys a thing or two, because they had to go back and look at some of the work that I did, and they were like, my goodness.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And they were like, we'll have him. You can work with us anytime. I appreciate that. This is how I was taught, But whenever they see that, it's just a deepening relationship. Again, relationship with your team,
Absolutely. Well, and I think the saying holds true for any business, which is if you want to get there fast, go alone.
Yeah.
And if you want to go far, you got to have a team.
with how I think you're perceived throughout the entire group, the people that meet you, your director level associates in the organization, what would be surprising to admit here to them that nobody knows about you?
Oh, gosh.
Guilty pleasure or an indulgence that you like? This is what we call a very long pregnant pause.
You're not kidding. I'm trying to think. I mean, I feel as though I am such an open book. I was pausing. I wasn't filtering through the things not to say. I just was trying to think, what in the world would that be?
What kind of movies do you watch on the weekend?
I honestly hardly ever watch movies.
Really?
Yeah.
No?
Not to say I don't love a good movie, but
What's your unwind time like? What does it look like?
gosh, usually I'll be either working outside. I'll be exercising is my unwind.
Oh, really?
That's my number one thing.
You're a cardio guy? You throw some weights over your head?
I'm going to go more body weight stuff at this point. I mean, maybe a rucksack or something like that. A little bit of free weights, but
calisthenics.
Those days are behind me. But,
really?
A lot of high rep stuff. I mean, typical, think, what do you call it? Think CrossFit without the weights.
I got you.
Right. So like high intensity circuit training type stuff, but going easy, old man style.
You're not old, my friend. I could promise you that. You may be an old soul, I think.
Guilty.
Very, very mature.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wife and family, what kind of things do you talk about with them, dinner table wise?
Oh,
daily?
Gosh. I think there's the standard, what's been going on with you today. However, I do have a little insider's cheat sheet because my wife is a school teacher also at my kids' school. So usually I've got a pretty good idea of what their schedule was like, but then it's really just getting into the good stuff.
Yeah.
What were you most excited about today? And one thing that we'll ask them pretty regularly is, what was your biggest challenge today? And one thing that I like to try and do with my kids is get them thinking about what they encountered that they can kind of shift their thinking on in some way. And it's going to depend on, what the situation was. Doesn't mean that it's always shifting, something they thought was a challenge into a quick fix or a positive, but just getting them to be aware of what they've experienced.
Yeah.
Right.
So the question of what did you find to be exceptional today or exciting or the most pleasurable part is essentially saying, hey, what's the joy you found today? Right.
Absolutely.
Which is something that
you got to get some every day.
Yeah. You really, and it is a muscle to be worked. I tell my kids, my son most especially, because he's kind of going through the age where there's awkwardness. There's a transition going on. He's 14. He is prone to see a lot of the negative, a lot of cynicism. So I've challenged him, find one good thing every day. And that you'll find that serves you so much better than talking about everything that's wrong or things that you don't like.
Oh, absolutely, man. And
take it from me.
There's so many books and so much great content out there on positivity, on gratitude, on the mental edge that you can get from those two things. And I don't think, while it can feel hokey at times, I don't think people can get enough of that because it's absolutely true.
Was there anything when you were a teenager that was said to you either by your parents or by influencers, mentors that were in your life that made you roll your eyes, but now makes sense?
A couple of things,
Yeah.
but one actually that stands out, we were just talking about, which is that your attitude is the only thing that you have control over today.
Very true.
When you leave this house, your attitude is the only thing that you have control over.
You can literally decide to be in a good mood or a bad mood.
Actually, when my folks were first starting B&I, my dad for years wore a lapel pin on his blazer that just said attitude. And when people would ask him about it, because it was a total conversation starter, right? He would say, well, I'm choosing to have a positive attitude today. And here's why. And then he would tell a story about something from a B&I meeting, right? Or a person that he had met. And it was so cheesy. It was so, and it was, as a teenage boy, it was one of those things that I rolled my eyes at.
We just kind of did the,
But man, it was simple genius.
It is.
In every way.
Yeah.
And, you know, in all honesty, I mean, besides the fact it was a good conversation starter, besides the fact that it was true, you know, looking back in that season, he had a lot on his plate. First off, he had an ornery teenage son. He also had a young upstart business. He had a lot of things going on in the background with family, just illnesses, cancer, just a lot of life. You know what I mean? And so I'm sure, while that was true, and it does tie into one of our core values in B&I, which is positive attitude.
Yeah.
I think it was as much for him as it was for anybody else.
It probably got him through a lot of things. So, because he was in my stage of life back when he was starting this up, mid 40s, late 40s, I would imagine.
Yep.
Yeah. That's,
he was actually into his mid 50s by then.
Oh, really? Okay. For some reason,
late starter with the kids.
Yeah. I mean, I thought maybe that they were in their 70s, but older than that, I guess.
Dad's 78.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Well, yeah. So he was into his mid 50s. Just saying, you're a young man too, Jim.
I totally am.
See?
I look at it that way. You really do manifest that. Every time I've gone beyond telling people how old I am, I just tell them what level I'm on. I'm on level 47, like a video game. And eventually I have to beat the bad guy at the end of the year. It's one way to look at it. That's
awesome. Right? Well, you know, and funny, you just talk about different ways of positioning it. He doesn't talk about his age. He actually just keeps track of the weeks. Yeah. Many weeks.
That's kind of like when you're first born, how many months are you?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't imagine you being ornery at all. It's just so funny how little you know about people or how they perceive themselves. Well, there you go. How do people get a hold of you or follow you? Because that's the other thing, dude, is that you really need to start like being a personality of sorts. You got the
well, maybe I should talk to somebody about that.
You should. You know, a podcast of some sort, right?
Absolutely.
I did reach out to Ivan Meisner about, I said, hey, it's probably time to update the sound of the podcast, the B&I podcast. And he was like, yeah, you know, let me tackle that when I get back from wherever he is. He's always somewhere.
Got to be asking.
You have to ask.
Absolutely.
It really does teach you how to ask for stuff. My kids know that. They'll ask. No doubt. For stuff. I've done a good job of instilling that in them.
Well,
to my detriment.
Understand. Well, as far as connecting with me, folks can reach out to me by email, old school. It's just Clay, C-L-A-Y, at bnitennessee.com. Right. Or you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram as well, at Clay Morgan on Instagram, or Twitter, at Clay Morgan as well.
Any aspirations to write a book, do public speaking professionally, anything like that for you?
There will be a book down the road.
Okay.
Right now, the aspiration, as I said earlier, is doubling this business in the next 3 years.
Right. Well, that's one way to look at it. If you're going to visit a B&I chapter, it might as well be mine. So if you want to reach out, make sure you do. Go to whatsyourproblempodcast.com. Like, subscribe, be a share bear, share it out to your friends if you like it. Give us a 5-star review. If you can't bring yourself to give us a 5-star review, then let me know why, and I'll work on that. And maybe after I work on it, and maybe even if we talk, you'll be compelled to leave us a 5-star review. But again, if you want to network your business or at least get a taste of what B&I is like, let me know. I'd be glad to have you as my guest. And Mr. Clay can also point you in the direction for other chapters that may not be in the area that Absolutely. Are in your neck of the woods.
Would love that opportunity, as well as, Jim, thank you very much for this opportunity to join you today.
Absolutely, my friend. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.